Ah jongens.
Jij woont hier toch? Hier?
Ja?
Ja. Fantastisch hoor.
Lekker.
Ja, hier.
Dat begon ja.
Oh, het is allemaal een keuze, hè? Het is allemaal een keuze. Het is toch wel alleen toch? Als ritje kunnen alleen dan. Alles iedereen. Oh, jij bent voor die... Voor de naam. Dat is ook wel leuk. Maar praten naar productie en selectie. Ik denk dat is... Ja, ik denk dat ook switchen naar zelf te verdienen als ik dat voor spul voor organiseren. En dit heeft goed te maken met terugkijken van de smaak van 2 externe bronnen die het selectioneren om daar terug te krijgen. Dat is voor audio, white noise.
Je weet wel dat ik het te doen.
Maar dat is natuurlijk alleen al jammer dat er een vrouw naast loopt. Nou ja, mijn vrouw. Nee, die vrouw.
Dat is na 11. En dan kom ik naar jullie toe en dan geef ik schop om elkaar. Nee. Ja, dat is een hele club.
Ik weet niet of je jouw vraag had.
Het was helemaal te vroeg.
Veel discussie over.
Nee, maar...
Met z'n drieën, pak je drieën.
Ja, dat zeg ik.
millions of people showed through their sorrow what sort of world they longed for.
Our world continues to have a majority made silent by the frustration of poverty.
To be afraid of violence, and that was a dominant feeling, and the generation of fear in the most effective weapon of dictatorship.
I believe the basic human nature is compassionate, or more affectionate nature. Therefore, human basic nature, I believe, gentleness.
Apartheid used religion unashamedly for its nefarious end. It approved of religion and of the churches when these supported apartheid.
Up to now, globalization favors the rich and the mighty and does not address one of the most devastating assaults on human dignity, poverty.
It is estimated that every day more than 20,000 people die because they are too poor to stay alive. They die of causes that could actually be addressed for relatively modest investment.
When violence and warfare become chronic in a region, then religion often gets sucked into the mess and becomes a part of the problem.
Corruptie, corruptie, corruptie.
Poverty strips a person of his or her humanity, and poverty takes away their freedom.
To worship freely is to breathe.
I had two options, only two options. Either to remain silent and wait to be killed, or to speak out and then be killed.
It's time to draw a red line against red as a weapon of war, as a weapon of oppression.
Freiheit ist alles andere als selbstverständlich. Freiheit ist zerbrechlich. Und Freiheit ist nicht vor Missbrauch gefeit.
The isolationism we see today is the fearful retreat from the increasing complexity and interrelatedness of global challenges such as climate change, water, food security, and involuntary migration.
Through all of these storms, the lighthouse still points the way home. We can get there with conviction, commitment, and cooperation.
I thank the Roosevelt Stichting, and I welcome all of you to the growing family of stubborn optimists who continue to make the world a better place for everyone.
We haven't reached the goals. No. Freedom from fear. At this very moment, more than ever, there is the fear for terrorism. Freedom from what? Forget it. So many people still living, well, their basic needs are not met. Freedom of expression. Look at the many countries in which the press still has enormous difficulties, and freedom of religion. People are murdered because they want to change religion. So there's still a lot to do.
Yes, I mean there's enormous work still to be done. Is it disappointing that we haven't reached that goal of perfect freedom? Of course, wouldn't we all like that? But it's the concept that brings us back to the work. And the work has honor, and that is what we need to be doing.
And it's not only international or national. Sometimes the best renewment and the best way of improvement starts at local levels. So the four freedoms are guidelines for you and me.
Our strength is our unity of purpose. To that
high concept. There can be no end, save victory. is freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God in his own way everywhere in the world. The third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy, peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor anywhere in the world.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highness, Mayor, Excellencies, esteemed laureates, members of the Roosevelt family, dear friends. On behalf of the Roosevelt Foundation, welcome in the Netherlands, in Zeeland, and welcome here in Middelburg. Our world has changed dramatically in the past years and few months. We have not yet dealt with the enormous impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and war is raging in Ukraine. Thousands of people have died and millions of refugees have left their homes in search of safety. Some refugees are here with us today. A special welcome to them. 40 years ago, the 4 Freedoms Awards were first presented here in this abbey. In 1982, we celebrated the bicentennial of diplomatic relations between the United States and the Netherlands. We honored then, and we honored still, our special historic bond with the United States and the Roosevelts. We cherish our long-lasting partnership and common heritage. In these past 40 years, great 4 Freedoms Award laureates addressed many important issues. The economic empowerment of the poor, the promotion of religious dialogue, the advancement of the freedom of expression and political liberties, the need for sustainable development for future generations, and the emancipations of girls and women. Today's laureates will tell us about their fight for freedom, their efforts to defend and protect human basic rights for themselves and for their fellow men. This year's laureates are among the youngest we have honored in Middelburg in the past 40 years. It is the result of a positive cooperation with students from the University College Roosevelt, and it underlines the contribution of young people to creating a better world. Their example may help us to focus on today's problems and on the issues that we have to address to meet the challenges of tomorrow and the needs of future generations. Our world has changed in the past 40 years, but people's rights and freedoms are still violated all around the world. And we always state that we should not take our freedom for granted. We also could say, especially now, we must realize that this statement is not without obligation. It comes with responsibility. It is about the personal choices we make in our daily lives and, if necessary, also about making sacrifices. The laureates we honor here today attest to that fact, each in their own way. They show in their life and work great dedication and commitment to defend and protect people's freedoms. World views and political opinions may differ, but the four freedoms are universal values. The four freedoms are the preconditions for human dignity, guidelines for all of us, for everyone, everywhere in the world. It requires our constant personal and joint commitment, everywhere and always. On behalf of the Roosevelt Foundation, the Roosevelt Institute in New York, and the members of the Roosevelt family, who, I'm proud to say, always join us here in Middelburg, I want to thank you for being here today and for committing to dedicate yourself to the four freedoms. I wish you all an inspiring ceremony. Thank you very much.
My activism is I had to leave my country and live in exile. Vietnam, where I am from, journalists, activists, dissident artists are censored, jailed, even beaten for expressing their opinion. This is a very terrible way to organize a society. The moment I thought I had to act was in 2016. I had nominated myself for the National Assembly election, but I was rejected from the ballot unfairly. Later the same month, I saw the police beat the protesters in the Formosa protest. I couldn't stand it, and I realized the government was using the police to suppress the protests. I decided I had to get out of my comfort zone to fight for human rights. I tried to change the world through my activism and my art. I created music and art to gather people, spread messages, give energy, and inspire people to keep fighting. They should realize they have power in numbers and can challenge laws against freedom of expression. My biggest fight is the fight against the censorship system in Vietnam, as well as the biggest media company, Facebook. Until today, Facebook still complies with the government to censor in the internet. We worked together with the press to pressure Facebook to better protect freedom of expression online. Without freedom of speech, there is no democracy. If people don't have the right to express their opinion and learn about other opinions, they cannot come together to decide how to organize their society. The future of our planet is at risk right now. And the only way to save ourselves is come together and stop the wars and address climate change and save this planet. I will never stop until our rights are protected.
Distinguished guests, it is my job in my day-to-day life to give words to subjects of social justice, but when writing my speech today, I paradoxically could not find the words. I watched the documentary On Your Road to Where You Are Today as an activist, Mike Hoy, and there are so many paradoxes in your life present as well. You are proud to be Vietnamese, but you also say you get angrier every single day because of the state of its democracy. You use social media to get to young people, but you also detest the way Facebook, big tech like Facebook, works with the government to oppress your people. From the beautiful jazzy tones of your album Descent to holding a sign that reads, "Piss on you, Trump," you embody the many faces of activism. And the whole world has watched you walk that tightrope and bring those seeming paradoxes together to harmonize in your art. Thank you for turning your fear, your fire, and most of all, your love into your work. And for inspiring me, a queer Black woman on the other side of the earth, to think to herself, if she can do it, maybe I can too. It is my absolute pleasure to present the Award for Freedom of Expression to Mike Hoy.
Thank you very much for giving me this award. I'm so happy, so honored. And I want to share this honor to my activist friends who are in jail now in Vietnam. I want to give you a song that I wrote about freedom of speech and expression and the political human rights situation in Vietnam. Việt Nam độc lập tự do hạnh phúc. Xin ông cho chúng tôi được đưa tiền cho ông, để ông cho chúng tôi được làm việc. Xin ông cho chúng tôi được dối lừa theo ông, để ông cho chúng tôi được ngu ngốc như ông. Xin ông cho chúng tôi được hát, cho chúng tôi được bày tranh sáng ngời, cho chúng tôi được yêu, cho chúng tôi được cúi lùi. Xin ông sự sáng màu tàn ác. Xin ông cho chúng tôi được phát hành sách, cho chúng tôi được đi lại tự do, cho chúng tôi được bảo vệ tổ quốc. Xin ông cho chúng tôi được chia sẻ thông tin, cho chúng tôi được làm từ thiện, cho chúng tôi được quyền như trong hiến pháp, quyền như trong hiến pháp, được quyền như trong hiến pháp. Mark Michele. Mark Michele.
Without freedom of worship, we cannot have peace if we cannot find the truth. And there is no way to find the truth unless everyone has the freedom to worship and share their experience with their faith, culture, and rituals. If it all remains mysterious to the outsider, there will always be confusion and distrust. Without freedom of worship, Poso will be a place full of suspicion, confusion, and fear. Here you can find Protestants, Catholics, Muslims, Balinese, Hindus, and many indigenous religions, all living and having the figure out of modern society together. Starting in 1998, at the fall of our military dictatorship, the Poso region of Sulawesi Islands has seen multiple episodes of what many would call religious violence, including riots, massacres, shooting, beheadings, and terrorist attacks. Over the years, the shape and the scope of the violence has changed, but in the reality, it has never been religious violence. It has always been a manipulation by economic and political interests over land and power in an area that is immensely wealthy in natural resources, minerals, and hydropower. The people of Poso have greatly suffered and have lost many of their freedoms in the process. The moment I had to act was when, during the Poso conflict, I was taken one night by a group of Muslims who were suspicious I was pretending to be a Muslim. I thought the worst thing might happen, but instead the best thing did. We stayed up all night discussing each other religious and theologies and realizing that it was political and economic interest, not religious one, that caused the Poso conflict. So it was then I realized there was a huge space for religious dialogue and freedom to take place, but no one was brave enough to do it. Because I didn't have much at the time and I'm a disabled single mother, but I did have a front porch where I began to invite local women to gather and for the first time have a safe space to meet each other and freely communicate to understand each other's religions and tribes. I founded the Women's School as a meeting space between women of different religions. And I realized, as a new woman keeps showing up, that there was the massive untapped resource of the women in the village across Poso that could create a genuine and lasting peace process to not only healing from the wounds of the conflict, but to build a more just and sustainable peace, so they cannot be divided again. The biggest challenge for me and for the Musintuwu Institute is the large national and local political and economic interests that are determined to keep the people of Poso in fear, separate from each other with no real freedoms. I have seen women who survived conflict, had their houses burned down, watched their family member get murdered, who are now leaders of their community and promote peace and justice for all faiths. Women are the secret sauce of the society. Yes, we can change the world by empowering women. Women have always changed the world. We are just beginning to recognize their incredible accomplishment. From our homes, the market, the house of worship, the land, and everywhere in between, women bring change. Women bring peace. Women bring prosperity.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highness, distinguished guests, every one of us can be a game changer. Words of our next most distinguished laureate, Lian Kogali. And Lian, I've had the opportunity to meet you only briefly over the past days, but already I'm impressed by the way you make these words reality. You are a game changer of your own kind. You were a strong woman of strong beliefs, of deep faith, and also a very free spirit. And the combination of these three elements, I think, has brought you where you are now and has brought your community where it is right now. You were raised as the child of a Christian pastor, like myself. You were raised in Sulawesi, in Indonesia. I know the country. And you were a theologian. So am I. There are many ways we connect, and I hope we can meet again to talk in length about everything you do for your country. You're a free spirit, and you learned to find your way to stand up for yourself as an unmarried mother in an environment of the church that would have liked to see otherwise. Marriage is still a very much preferred way of living in the church. And you shook in your life and found ways to transform the violently conflictuous relationship between people of different religions in your society into a more peaceful cohabitation. And the key to that transformation, you thought, are and were women. Because women do not debate theology on a very theoretical level, but women connect with each other in a very practical way on a daily basis by talking about the food that is halal or not halal. And in that way, people get to know each other so much more intimately, so much more practically, and there is freedom to be found in that. You started with 7 women, and now there are more than 500 spread over more than 80 schools in your homeland. And that's still growing, that number. I think, as we all are, deeply impressed and touched by your relentless effort to bring about sustainable peace in a society where there was once only bitter conflict. In your work and through your personality, I think you embody the best religion has to offer. A freedom of spirit, and with it comes independence and courage to stand up for your beliefs on an individual level, but also the source of inspiration that religion can be to fight for freedom of worship itself. And that is of a great contribution for society as a whole. I thank you, Lian Kogali, for this inspirational example you set for us. And it's wonderful that over many, many miles that separate us, we can now get to know you and put you in our middle and make sure that your work is seen by all of us. Itu suatu kehormatan bagi saya. It is a great honor and privilege for me to present to you the Freedom of Worship Award.
Thank you so much.
Your Majesty, and distinguished guests. It's an honor for me and my community to receiving this Freedom of Worship Award. Religions remains the center of the most people's lives and culture. That is why it's critical that each different religions understand each other's ways of worship and different religious identity. That is only possible through freedom of worship equally amongst all people with ongoing dialogues between both local religious leaders as well as grassroots society. In this context, based on our experience in Poso, Sulawesi, the first thing that is important in dispelling suspicion on religions is to ask others and talk about the religions freely and without political pressure. This builds a deep understanding of one's own religions as well as other people's religions, so that it can build an attitude of respect for other people's religious choices and prevent the political and economic interests to manipulate religions for conflict. My presence here represents the many hidden lives of the grassroots women in Poso to realize that they are the ones who have done this and collaborate to realize their family and villages' freedom of worship in conflict and post-conflict contexts. Women are the secret sauce of the society. Throughout time, women have always been and will continue to be a teacher of our next generations. Humanity success is dependent on our freedom. Therefore, the Freedom of Worship Award goes to the grassroots community of women and every individual who work relentlessly to ensure that religions and ethnicity, identity are not exploited for mutual hate and violence. Individuals are spark, but community are the fire of change. We never really only represent ourselves. We are always representing the community. From our homes, the market, the house of worship, and everywhere in between, women bring change, women bring peace, women bring prosperity. Each of them turn strangers into friends, turn friends into the community, so then the community can work together to bring out the conditions necessary for peace and freedom to prevail. Thank you for everyone who has contributed to the freedom of worship and those in the future who will continue on after we are all gone. Thank you very much. Pakaroso.
When I was young and growing up in my community in Kenya, girls and women did not have a voice in decision-making. They were supposed to be silent, to be submissive to men and to the elders who are men in my community and who make all the important decisions. This inequality is at the root of many injustices faced by young women in Kenya, including female genital mutilation and child marriage. When girls marry young and do not have the opportunity to finish their education, it means they cannot be women of their dreams. Just like boys, girls have dreams of what they want to be when they grow up. They want to be teachers, they want to be lawyers, they want to be doctors, they want to be journalists, they want to be CEOs. But they are forced to go through female genital mutilation and to get married young. They cannot finish their education. They can't contribute, use their creativity to support their families and villages. They cannot live their dreams. The moment I had to act was when I was 8 years old, and I was told that my older sister and I would be subjected to female genital mutilation, as it is the tradition in the Maasai community. I knew it was so painful. I knew some girls had died, and I knew that girls had to quit school after female genital mutilation, so we ran away. A second moment was when girls started to come to me. When they heard I became the woman I wanted to be through education. Girls came to me because they ran away from their parents who wanted to marry them off. This is when I knew I had to take responsibility and find a solution, and that's how A Nice Place was born. To end female genital mutilation in my community, my biggest challenge is convincing the elders, talking to decision makers, making them see the value of these girls, the promise they hold, the dedication in their eyes, that if we could only close the gap between the opportunities that are there and see these girls in the last mile, we will all benefit. Now they arrive with their own daughters to see A Nice Place, and their ambitions for their daughters is completely changing. It is these girls that drop out of school, then marry young, become pregnant early and vulnerable to violence and poverty. It is right there in the community, deep down, where impact can and should be made. Nice Place is there today. It is small today, but the dream is quite big. About 20,000 girls in Kenya and Tanzania have avoided female genital mutilation since 2010 when we started our Alternative Rites of Passage projects. Alternative Rites of Passage celebrates girls becoming women and all the beautiful things about our culture. Celebrations with music and dance, working together, they learn to speak up, dress up, and dance without the harm caused by female genital mutilation. I cannot think of anything that will make me stop working for change until every girl is free from the threat of female genital mutilation and child marriage.
Dear distinguished guests, dear nice Lengete, it's an honor and a great pleasure for me to hand you this prize and title here today, the Freedom of Want Award. Because brave people like you, inspiring women like you, are so important to make this world of us a much better place, which sounds, of course, very cliché and common. But every change ever made in the world in the direction of development, freedom, equal rights is made by someone who said, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to do it different than all those people that are surrounding me. I am not letting them drive me crazy with their irrational and painful rules that keep girls and women from a lot of good things, from becoming their true self in freedom, and that take away their many dreams. You were brave enough to fight against traditions that went on and on and on for centuries, generation after generation. Girls were circumcised in Kenya. A terrible and very painful cultural operation that no girl in the world wants to experience and that keep them from the simple joys of life. They were also kept away from the right of education until you stood up. You said, I don't agree with this. I want to make a difference. I think I can break this chain called tradition or religion or culture, or doesn't matter how you call it. You, dear Nice, are one of those very rare women that can be called a true hero. A lot of women and people are thankful for your work. I hope you realize that, and I hope you enjoy your prize. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I feel so honored to receive this award from Freedom of Want. Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, Prime Minister, Roosevelt Foundation, and my fellow ambassadors, change makers, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to accept this award. I am proud and I'm humbled to accompany the previous award winners, people who have shaped the course of the world. People like our very own Nelson Mandela. His words will forever live with me, and they inspire me every day, and I quote, "It is in your hands to make a better world for all who live in it." Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. A winner is a dreamer who never gives up. I am a dreamer and a doer, and I will never give up trying to make change for the place or for a better world for girls and women around Kenya and mostly the Maasai community that I come from. They want to escape the cat, just like I had escaped the cat. I will never cease to give more girls an education, just like I got an education. I want to dedicate this award to them, to the girls and to the Maasai community, where they are seeing change happen every day, where elders have started to listen, to trust, and to embrace the ideas that the cat can be a thing of the past. And to the girls who have started to believe that they have the same right of freedom as boys, and as you and me. I dedicate it to my family, my parents, my sister, my granddad, my mom and dad who raised me to become the nice, who strive for education, who dared to dream big. My sister who sacrificed herself so as I could escape the cat. My grandfather, I call him Babu, who is an elder who believed in me and became an ally in making change towards attitudes and making change happen to so many other girls all over Kenya. And to AMRE flying doctors and private donors who supported me in my dream of building a nice place, a safe haven for girls, where we give girls a safe space to dream, to learn, and to lead their lives. My goal, together with AMREF and the communities, is to bring female genital mutilation to an end by 2030. We have already saved over 20,000 girls in Kenya through the alternative rites of passage, but there is still more to be done. Let me give you a few statistics. Every year, 12 million girls before the age of 18, that's every girl every minute. More than 100 girls, every year 12 million girls marry before the age of 18, that's 28 girls every minute. More than 100 girls under the age of 18 will be married during this speech acceptance, and thousands during this event. 4 million girls, again globally, are still threatened by female genital mutilation every year. And right now, we are seeing millions of girls drop out of school due to COVID-19 pandemic, poverty, and war. All this is interconnected. All these are cuts of dreams and ambitions for our girls. Cuts on the human rights, cuts on their health rights, cuts on their right to education, cuts on their right to a life free from fear, free from want. It takes a village, and a global village like this one, to make the needed change. It takes patience, time, investments, and dreamers and doers. This award stimulates me and all of us to be dreamers who never give up and to work even harder to make change all over Africa and beyond. By investing in girls, by giving them a voice and leaving them unharmed, they will become women of their dreams, and the world will be a better place for all of us. Thank you for recognizing that with this award, and let's dream on. Thank you so much, everyone.
A lot of LGBTI people around the country and around the world actually feel fear at some point of their lives. Fear for their lives, fear for their loved ones, fear for the people that are inside of their community. And these fears are rooted in systemic LGBTI oppression. As an LGBTI activist in the field, I know that one day I can be targeted by a hate group, and I know that my life is never safe.
In all the pride marches I attended, I experienced fear. I was fearful for losing my life, losing my friends' lives, but at the same time, I knew that I wasn't alone. I was with my friends, I was with my loved ones, and together we knew how to beat fear.
Every single year we lose people from our community. Fear is very natural to us. For many, many years, we've been fighting with an oppressive government. We've been fighting with oppressive forces and people that even say that we are not real, that say we are just actors that come to dismantle the country. So our biggest opponent in this country is not a person or it is not a group, but rather the concept of misinformation and hate speech in the country.
The source of misinformation and the hate speeches are right now coming from the government. The officials from the government are doing this in every day. So the people in Turkey right now are hearing a lot of hate speeches in their daily news, and that results in hate crimes.
One of the most important turning points for our activism and also for the founding of Uniqueer has been the 2019 Pride March. Just before the march, we got the great news that the Ankara governor's ban on all LGBTI events was lifted by the courts. But the rectorship of METÜ did not agree with this, and they imposed their own ban, denying the facts and creating a ban that was not placed by the government. So because of this, there were police present inside of the METÜ campus, which is unheard of. And every time that we tried to talk with them, they shut us down, saying that our rights did not matter to them. And before we could even start the march, before we could even begin chanting and waving our flags and demonstrating peacefully, we were taken into custody. But the students inside of our university actually came out, and a lot of people protested our arrests and also protested peacefully for a Pride March. And this shows the resiliency of the LGBTI community in Turkey, because even though the police were coming at these young activists with pepper spray, with plastic bullets and a lot of force, they still gathered, they still got together and showed their force. And because of this beautiful event and the resiliency of the LGBTI activists in METÜ, we wanted to found Uniqueer so that we could see this around the country.
A Pride March should be organized in every university. And the way to do that, strengthening the LGBT activism in universities, support the young LGBT activists in there by giving the tools that they need and by being with them.
And the most important thing that Uniqueer does for these student communities is get them together, because the exchange of ideas is really important in a very political climate. We as Uniqueer really value creating spaces for young LGBTI activists to come together and raise their voices.
Hello, King Alexander, Queen Maxima, Princess Beatrix. It's a big honor to stand here for the organization who receives the Freedom of Fair Award. Because we think that freedom is something normal, something universal. But when you see at Ukraine that one guy can take your freedom away in a split second, you should think again, is freedom universal? Is freedom normal? We also know that freedom in sexuality, we think that's normal too. But when you see other countries suffering under a religion, suffering under a regime, burned by terroristic attacks, then we should consider ourselves as very, very lucky. In these days, it's normal to use the words faggot, nicht, mietje, homo, to explain to people of other sexuality that they are less, that they are weak. So we should consider ourselves very lucky that we are here. But it had also to do with the freedom of speech. So we accept it. That's why, for me, it's a really great honor to present the Freedom of Fair Award to the Turkish organization UNICUR. Because this organization helps young people to discover themselves, despite of the regime of Erdogan. This organization doesn't bend down for their power. This organization, UNICUR, uses their power to help young people to be able to be yourself the way you want, the way you will, and the way you have to be. And that's the power of love. I like to quote a very important person in our community. It's not Mr. Roosevelt, it's RuPaul. From a beautiful series, RuPaul's Drag Race. You can watch it on Netflix. And I try to do it in Turkish. So, kendini sevemezsin, başkalarını sevemezsin. If you don't love yourself, how the hell can you love somebody else? Can I hear an amen? When you don't love yourself, how the hell can you love somebody else? Can I hear an amen? Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, the Award of Fair Freedom Award goes to UNICUR. Milika.
Dear distinguished guests, it's a great honor to be here today. It's not just important for me or our organization, but also for everyone who fights for the equal rights of LGBTIs. Receiving this award means that we are seen, our struggle is seen, and that means that we are not alone. Although I received the Freedom from Fear Award, it does not mean that I'm not afraid. Sometimes I'm afraid to be myself. Sometimes I'm afraid to stand up to those attacking my rights and my very existence. Although this fear is justified, I also know that I'm not alone, and there will be someone next to me whenever I feel afraid. That could be my colleague Melike, that could be my friends at UNICUR, that could be LGBT activists in Turkey. And I know that so many people from around the world will stand also with me, with us. And that is the thing that keeps us fighting, keeps my organization fighting without fear. To achieve true equality for the LGBTIs, to establish safe spaces for the LGBTIs in Turkey and the world, we have to raise our voices and work together. LGBTI phobia is pervasive in all societies. Destroying it is our common responsibility. We need to establish solidarity, a solidarity which has no boundaries, a solidarity which is beyond societies. Our solidarity today should not end here. I feel strong today as I've received this award on behalf of our organization, but for us to continue to this fight, the solidarity must continue. Solidarity is the thing that makes us strong, keeps us alive, and enables us to fight. And finally, I will say what I said when I was acquitted in a trial. I was tried to punishment because we organized a pride march at a university. Just as I don't feel alone today, I continue my fight so that a young LGBTI student who had just started university does not feel alone fighting with this hate.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, I am honored to be accepting this award, not only for Uniqueer, but for the young queer community of Turkey. Even in the face of government crackdowns, arrests, violence, legal action, members of my queer chosen family persist, and we fight to make the ideals of true equality a reality for Turkey. In a country where our mere existence is being questioned, young LGBTI activists understand that we are a community united in solidarity against fear, and we believe in the potential for change. We also know that equality is not a fight that ends with some parts of the community or the metropolitan cities. We know that until medically unnecessary surgeries are banned on intersex children, until trans people can self-determine their identities without mandatory sterilization or lengthy court procedures, until non-binary identities are accepted by law, equality is not achieved. I know that one day these demands will be achieved, and they will be caused by the amazing activism of my chosen queer family, and I am so proud to be a part of it. Now, I would like to take a moment to address the youngest members of my chosen family, because ideals are not enough to process some of the emotions that we feel. My dear friends, I know that some days you wake up with a heavy feeling in your heart. I know that even the people closest to you can make you feel unworthy, unlovable, and unimportant. I know that sometimes you feel alone, like a rock barreling down a hill, and you have no control over your life. Trust me, these feelings are symptoms of a system that punishes anyone that does not conform to their norms. Your existence is a reason for all of us to celebrate and keep fighting for. I need you to know that even if you've not met us yet, there are thousands of people just like me, just like us, that wake up every day and choose to fight for you. You will never be alone, and your chosen queer family is waiting for you to join us in our fight. Do not ever be afraid. Ve trans çocuklar vardır. Thank you.
Hang de lakens buiten, ook als ze vuil zijn en dat altijd zullen blijven. Het is van mooie warme lijven. Breek de laatste ruiten, ze zitten losjes in de eeuwenoude ramen. Nee, je hoeft je niet te schamen voor hoe naakt je bent. Je bent vrij om hier te zijn. En net zo vrij om weg te lopen. Je bent vrij en zo licht als voor je open. Zonder net zo vrij om weg te varen. Je bent vrij, je hoeft jezelf niet te verklaren. Zonder vlaggen, zonder wimpels, maar luister naar het doek dat wappert in de wind. Op de golven, miljoenen rimpels. De wereld is nooit af, maar kan altijd beter. Wees niet bang, jij staat niet alleen. Wees niet bang, het is van iedereen. Wees niet bang, zeg maar wat je denkt, wat je voelt, wat je wilt en waarheen. Zonder vlaggen, zonder wimpels, maar hoor het doek dat wappert in de wind.
I wanted to give up so often, and it hasn't changed since. I just can't step away now because, you know, I became like a symbol of freedom. They voted for me not as for a person, not as for future president, but just like a symbol of changes. Why I can't declare myself as president? Because we know for sure that the elections were falsified. But I can accept that I was chosen by people as national leader. And, you know, I just can't come and say, I'm president, you have to obey. No, it's absolutely not about me. I want the Belarusians to live in a free country, in safe country, where they are not afraid to speak, where they are not afraid to be grabbed on the streets if they are not agree with something. I'm more frightened than anybody else among them, but I just can't give up.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highness, members of the Roosevelt family, and dear Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya, ladies and gentlemen. When you addressed the European Parliament only 5 months ago, you spoke some ominous words. Words that I'd like to repeat today. Dictatorships don't have natural geographical limits, you said. They spread if they are not stopped. And since then, history has proved you right. Since then, we have witnessed Russia's unjust and outrageous acts of aggression against Ukraine, a free and democratic European nation that has been under attack for some months now. Of course, first and foremost, This war is about the fate and future of the Ukrainian people. But it also directly affects the future of the people of Belarus. It affects your personal fight for freedom and democracy in your country. And in fact, this war, this brutal assault on the rule of law, affects us all. So it should concern us all, because it confronts us with fundamental questions about the cost of peace and self-determination. What are they worth to us? Where do we stand? And what sacrifices are we willing to make to stop injustice and autocracy from spreading? Because, as we have seen once again, when that happens, innocent people pay the price. Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya, you are an inspiration to the people of Belarus. You have given a voice to the hundreds of thousands who marched for freedom in the streets of Minsk and other cities in Belarus. And now you are an example to the world. Because in both word and deed, you have shown that freedom, democracy, and the rule of law need defending. Through the power of peaceful action, with reason and resolve. For you, this has been self-evident, ever since your husband was arrested. And you have risen to that challenge, despite the great personal cost and sacrifices involved. The 2022 International Four Freedoms Award is, of course, a recognition of your crucial work in Belarus. It is a personal honor. But given the situation in the world today, I hope that it will also be seen as an expression of support for democracy worldwide. That it underlines the message that President Roosevelt sent out to the American people and the world's democratic forces in his 1941 State of the Union address. The message that democracy and the rule of law cannot exist without freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. Today, that message has lost none of its truth and none of its relevance. So let us reaffirm it here and now. To the people of Belarus, to the people of Ukraine, and to the people of the world. Ms. Tsikhanouskaya, you once said, "I'm not in politics for power. I'm in it for justice." With your leadership, your words, and your actions, you are a beacon of hope to all those who suffer injustice. And we deeply admire your courage and determination. It is now my honor to invite you and Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt Brown to come forward. The 2022 International Four Freedoms Award is yours.
Your Majesties, King, Queen, and Princess, Your Excellency, Prime Minister, dear hosts, distinguished guests, and friends of Belarus. It is with great humility and honor that I accept the Four Freedom Award today. I know this award goes to the thousands of fighters against tyranny in Belarus and around the world. I want to share with you the words of our Belarusian philosopher Vladimir Matskevich, who is one
of many thousands behind bars. His major lesson to us all was very simple, yet revolutionary. He said, "Call things by their true name." Indeed, it was revolutionary for us to call the man who clung the power for 27 years the usurper and not the elected president. Once we did that in August 2020, everything changed. The fear disappeared. Hundreds of thousands were peacefully marching Belarusian cities after an endless coma. We recognized ourselves as nation that stands for freedom, and that we are the majority. To quote Václav Havel, the powerless became the power, as the powerless in Belarus paid with their freedom, health, and lives. Many went missing, and many more were forced into exile. We learned then to call things by their true name, and I believe that this is what freedom is all about. To take the next step, to act consistently with your words. And I have a feeling the world doesn't really understand what the regimes in the Kremlin and Minsk really are. Fear blinds, indifference blinds, economic interests blind. Dear friends, there is no other way to say these regimes are in absolute evil today. These regimes are built on envy, humanity, violence. They drag us into the past, and when we refuse, they leave behind a desert. This evil grows like a disease, and it will not stop in Belarus and Ukraine. I pray not, but there could be yet another victims, Poland, Lithuania, the Netherlands. You know, it's only 2.5 hours flight from Ukraine or Belarus. Had the world woken up from the hypnosis in 2020 and remembered that freedom is a value and not just a right, and taken consistent action against the Belarusian dictator, there might not have been this devastating Russian invasion of Ukraine from territory of Belarus today. I really want to believe that Putin and Lukashenko won't get away with their crimes in 2022. And yet, the reaction of the world to these dictators' actions is alarming. Some are still seeking a dialogue with the evil. Remember, dictators cannot be re-educated. Tyrants are emboldened by appeasement, not placated. I've been repeating it for the last year and a half, shouting with pain and terror. Violence is the end of any dialogue. It is time to realize that stopping evil is our common cause. In such times, one cannot be just an observer. I also often hear that we need to find a compromise with Lukashenko and Putin. Let me answer to this with the words of President Roosevelt, whose granddaughter I was privileged to meet here in Middelburg. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Freedom and survival are only then possible when we choose both of them. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I believe that freedom is also about making difficult but the right choices. When the Russians attacked Ukraine, people in Belarus made a choice to take to streets in cities all over the country. It was a difficult and painful choice. 1,500 people got arrested within the first weeks, but it was the right choice. People in Belarus are arrested every day for praying in the Church of Ukraine. Imagine if right now plainclothes men were sneaking in during service to identify worshippers and arrest them. That is Belarus today, but Belarus still resists. At the outbreak of the current war, my fellow countrymen started an anti-war movement. The railways get disrupted for days due to our activists. We call them partisans. Men and women unite to stop occupants from invading Ukraine. Three young men were caught in an action 3 weeks ago, and the regime's thugs cold-bloodedly shot them in the knees. Our country didn't become a place where the Russian army feels safe. Therefore, it had to give up plans of invading Kiev from the territory of our country. One of the key factors was the Belarusian partisans' war against the railways. When I stand here and look at the other laureates, I'm once again reminded that freedom means self-sacrifice. Not just suffering, but acting boldly. In the Belarusian language, the word freedom sounds voля, and at the same time means willpower. Thus, willpower and freedom should sound the same to Belarusians. Back in May 2020, when my husband Sergei, who was planning to run for presidency and got arrested, I remember waking up and not wanting to get out from under the blanket. I was full of fear and despair. Then I decided to register as a candidate and take part in the race in his place, out of love, out of solidarity, out of anger. And I saw millions of Belarusians supporting me. The powerless gained power at that moment. The power of dignity, the power of freedom, the power of hope. The next question we should ask about freedom is, what should we do to gain it? History has the answer. Europe gained its freedom from Hitler not through appeasement, but through the firm and united action against the Hitler's Reich. Only if the world unites in the fight against evil, then we will be able to win. And let's not forget that solidarity and humanity are our superpower, which we must never forget, and it distinguishes us from evil. We will continue to fight for the freedom in Belarus, for Ukraine, for against the tyranny that wants to send the world back to the dark ages. If we fail, darkness will fall. But for every mother rescuing her kids, for every child rescuing their parents, for every act of compassion, I see that love is stronger than hate. And I felt it one more time here in Middelburg. Dear friends, standing here at this historical place, I want to finish with one thing I'm fully convinced of. We can't let dictators make history, because history and future belong to us. Thank you.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highness, Prime Minister Rutte, King's Commissioner Pullman, esteemed laureates and distinguished guests. It is wonderful to be back in the Netherlands and to be back in Middelburg. It is especially happy for me to have two of my grandchildren here. Eleanor, who you just met, and James, who is sitting next to my daughter, Margie. We bring you greetings from my whole family and from the Roosevelt Institute Board and our CEO, Felicia Wong, who have asked me to express their gratitude for bringing forward these amazing individuals who are living out the meanings of the four freedoms in such brave and effective ways. They stun us with their courage and intensity, and hopefully motivate us to be like them in our daily lives. As Jane Goodall, that wise woman, teaches us in her most recent book, telling the stories of people who face the impossible and do it anyway is the best way to motivate ourselves and others to have not only hope, but to act on it. In July of 1940, as war raged in Europe, my grandmother, Eleanor Roosevelt, said, "We cannot tell from day to day what may come. This is no ordinary time. No time for weighing anything except what we can do best for the world as a whole. And that responsibility rests on each and every one of us. Today, we are once again in times that are far from ordinary. So thank you, laureates. When I was last at this podium, you were kind enough to allow me to express my sadness, my fears and worries over my own country, the nation that grew into the modern era under my grandfather and my grandmother's leadership. In the nation that I grew up believing stood for and strived for democracy, fed by the four freedoms of speech, of religion, from want, and from fear. Being here with you, inspired by your laureates, brought a measure of comfort and encouragement. But I knew there was clearly a lot of work we still needed to do. Well, these days I sleep a little bit better, but there is still so much to do because democracy is, in fact, in great peril. To paraphrase the book of Micah, we can listen to these champions of democracy, and know what is good. But what does democracy require of us? It requires that in our daily lives, in large and in small ways, that we build the pathways of justice that undergird speech and expression, that we work for a peaceful and secure existence for every single human being, that we speak out against hatred and cruelty and fight to correct systems when they veer away from the path of human dignity, and that we remember how much we need each other to do this. We cannot do it alone. So thank you for inviting us to be your partner in this quest to save democracy, to strengthen the democracy, and to leave a legacy of freedom for our children, for all the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Your Majesties, Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, esteemed laureates, members of the Roosevelt family, dear friends. It was an honor to welcome you here in Zeeland, our beloved land in the sea, our land that recognizes and promotes the four freedoms as our guiding principles. I hope and trust that the example today's laureates have set will inspire you in all your own efforts to make a better future. Today, 40 years after we started presenting the Four Freedoms Awards in Middelburg, we also want to leave you with a positive message. The first is, come back to Zeeland. And when you leave us today, you will all receive a candle with a quote. One is a well-known quote from President Roosevelt. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The other is said about Eleanor Roosevelt. It reads, "It's better to light a candle than curse the darkness." Dear friends, the positive message, remember what connects us, what we share, and act accordingly. Together with you, the Roosevelt Foundation and the Roosevelt Institute will continue to promote the four freedoms. We want to thank our laureates and today presenters. We want to thank you, dear friends, for your support. We will soon move to lunch. Please remain seated whilst the royal family, the laureates and the presenters have to leave the church first, and then please follow the instructions of our assistant. I thank you very much. Thank you.